Hello, everyone. Right at the top of the hour, and we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining us today for our Able Success in the Real World webinar. The purpose of today's webinar from the Able National Resource Center is to provide a space for all of you in our audience to hear three very diverse stories, experiences, and lessons learned about ABLE accounts and their use directly from ABLE account owners themselves. For ABLE-eligible individuals and your family members who still hesitate to set up an ABLE account, today's webinar is an opportunity to hear from three of our ABLE advisors. We're going to talk more about that, but two individual ABLE account owners and a parent of an ABLE account owner on why they chose to set up an ABLE account and specific examples of how ABLE is helping them to achieve a better life experience. For existing ABLE account owners or family members who want to hear concrete real-world strategies and lessons from other ABLE account owners, this is your opportunity to hear from those who are on the front line, pioneering and problem-solving how best to incorporate ABLE in their lives to achieve a better life experience. So with that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm Miranda Kennedy. I'll be facilitating our discussion today, and I'm the co-director of the ABLE National Resource Center. I have a few housekeeping slides I need to get through first before we dive into our discussion. We'll be going through our agenda as well. But to get started, so in terms of listening to today's webinar, the audio for today's webinar is being broadcast through your computer. So please make sure your speakers are turned on or your headphones are plugged in. You can also control the audio broadcast using the audio broadcast panel. And if you accidentally close the panel, you can reopen it by going to the communicate menu at the top of the screen and choosing join audio broadcast. And there's a helpful little visual there as well if you need to use that. Additionally, if you do not have capabilities on your computer or prefer to listen by phone, you can dial the number on the right-hand side as well, and I'm having my team share that in the chat box so you can look for it there as well. We move past this slide. In terms of captioning, real-time captioning is provided during the webinar. The captions can be found in the media viewer panel that's on the lower right-hand side of the webinar platform. You can make that larger or smaller, just like the chat, the Q&A, or the participants panel. And this is going to be an interactive discussion. So for submitting questions, we're going to save our Q&A till the end, but as you're having thoughts or questions or comments that are coming up during the discussion, please go ahead and put those in the Q&A box as it's occurring to you. So you can submit those questions at any time during the webinar. If you're listening by phone and you're not logged into the webinar, you can email those questions to mredden, it's R-E-D-D-E-N, at ndi-inc.org. And Maggie at mredden@ndi-inc.org is also who you can reach out to if you have any technical assistance needs throughout the webinar. You can also use the chat box and send a message to NDI admin. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and walk us through what our agenda is going to be for today. We're going to be introducing our three ABLE account owners. We're very happy to have them here with us. And then we're going to be diving into why ABLE. We're going to talk about the 2018 ABLE advisors and doing our Q&A with Edward, Sara, and Larry, our ABLE account owners. We're also going to be sharing our ABLE roadmap to enrollment and roadmap to independence. So for those of you who have questions about just the technical details, we've got guides to all of that. So we can access Larry and Sara and Edward for their individual stories, but then we also have the technical tools if you just want to know the how-to of enrollment or how to make the most of your ABLE account from that more technical perspective, but we want to give you their personal perspective here today, which is also why we're going to provide a link to our other ABLE success stories from our other ABLE advisors, in addition to the three we're highlighting here. Then we're going to take questions from the audience. And at the end, do stick around. We have a 90-minute webinar, but at the end, we are going to be giving our first public announcement of our ABLE advisors for 2019. So stick around for that as well. All right. With that, I'm going to go ahead and just set up before I allow them to introduce themselves. But to set you up, to let you know who are Sara, Larry, and Edward. These are 3 of our 9 ABLE advisors. So in 2018, we had our first cohort of ABLE advisors, and these advisors represent a diverse selection of ABLE programs, types of disability, geographic locations, ages, gender, and ethnicity. They also act as national spokespeople, providing a human face to ABLE. And they serve also as a focus group to the ABLE National Resource Center to provide us with feedback to increase the quality of our education and support to ABLE-eligible individuals and their family members. So during 2018, these advisors have been sharing their knowledge, their success, and how they're using their ABLE accounts with millions of other ABLE-eligible individuals. And it's really that lived experience, their personal stories that can help to motivate others to take advantage of the transformative benefits of being an ABLE account owner. I think you're going to see that here today. So our ABLE advisors consist of both working age adults. We've got 2 of those individuals here today with disabilities, and also parents of children with disabilities. And we have a representative from that group as well. So they have a diverse range of motivations for opening an ABLE account. This can be short or long-term financial goals, or both, for how those funds in their accounts can be used and how they hope their accounts will help them increase their health, independence, and quality of life. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up to our ABLE account owner and 2018 ABLE advisor, Saras Perez, to tell you a little bit about herself. We're giving a background for each of the advisors, just 1 slide on each to give you a sense of who they are before we dive into the Q&A. So Sara, go ahead and tell us a little bit about you.
Hi, my name is Saras Perez, and I am 36 years old and ABLE eligible due to a mental health disability. I'm a mixed media artist, and I volunteer in my community, and I'm running for school board, actually, in the Irish Hills of Michigan. Me and my parents are the ones contributing to my ABLE account to improve my overall quality of life. I'm in the process of getting out of debt by paying down medical bills. I'm also using my account to offset medication costs and to support my growing photography business and ability to earn and put more money into my ABLE account. I want everyone to have an ABLE account who is eligible. For me, it was a way to get out of debt that was stress-free. Plus, you don't have to contribute a lot to it, but whatever you contribute is well taken care of, and you know that it's there if you need it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Sara. We're going to be hearing more from you here in just a minute, but for now, we're going to go ahead and have Larry introduce himself. This is Larry Anjali, and he's the parent of an ABLE account owner. So, Larry, take it away.
Thanks, Miranda, and hello, everyone. My name is Larry Anjali. I'm a parent of a 22-year-old son with autism. I also live in Michigan, in Detroit area, in Farmington Hills, and while our son, Anthony, was diagnosed with ASD at a very young age, we, like many parents, began to save for his college education when he was born by making regular contributions to a 529 account in the hope that our son would someday attend college. And as I'll be discussing later, we've begun the process of transitioning some of those funds into an ABLE account now that the accounts are fully available, and the process for that is well documented. I did want to also add in my introduction that I really do believe the best times are ahead for families that are impacted by disability in some way, shape, or form. We've definitely seen it change markedly in the last 22 years since Anthony was born. The world is just becoming a much more accommodating, accepting, and supportive place for people with disabilities and their families, which of course gives me great hope for the future. And I think ABLE is going to play a really important role in that by helping families and individuals really live a fruitful life and having the ability to have the resources to be able to do that.
Great. Thank you, Larry. And as Larry mentioned, you're going to be hearing more about that as we go through our Q&A. So now let's go ahead, and here's our final of our 3 ABLE account owners for today, Edward Mitchell. So Edward, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your experience with ABLE accounts?
Yes, indeed. My name is Edward. I'm 31 years old. I'm ABLE eligible due to a spinal cord injury that left me with a hit-and-run accident when I was 17. I have my MBA, and I'm currently working 2 part-time jobs. One is an independent living specialist at a Center for Independent Living, and as a fan relations coordinator with a minor league baseball team, the Jackson Generals. I'm using my ABLE account in order to save for vehicle modifications and to finally be able to move out of my parents' house and into my own accessible housing. ABLE has allowed me to start saving without penalizing or jeopardizing my benefits. My parents worry what will happen to me when they're no longer able to help or have passed away. ABLE has given them peace of mind about my future. Plus, unlike a special needs trust that must be controlled by a trustee or trustees, ABLE gives me, a person with a disability, control over my finances and increased independence.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Sarah, Larry, and Edward, for giving us a little bit of background in the audience, some perspective on your story before we dive into our questions. So now you have a sense of our 3 ABLE account owners. We have a series of questions we're going to be asking each of them in turn. And they all relate to why ABLE. Our first question is a very short one. We just want to know in one sentence, what does the ABLE Act mean to you? So Sarah, what does it mean to you? And Sarah, you might be on mute.
In a word, I would say it's opportunity. No, in a word, I would say it's opportunity.
Even better than a sentence, a word, yes, opportunity. That's a pretty powerful statement about the ABLE Act. Thanks, Sarah. Larry, how about you? One word or one sentence on what the ABLE Act means to you?
Yeah, sure. I would say it means financial freedom and flexibility for our son to live his life.
It's a pretty powerful statement. And Edward, how about you? What does the ABLE Act mean to you when you distill it to its essence?
Diversity and independence in one's future.
Okay, I think that sets us up very nicely as we dive into some additional details. Thank you so much. So we covered this a little bit, but maybe you can get into it a little bit more here. And we'll start with you, Sarah. Why did you open an ABLE account, and what do you hope to achieve with it?
I opened an ABLE account because I've been disabled my whole adult life, and I didn't have a way to really have the opportunity that other people do to save money because you can only save up to $2,000 without it affecting your medical benefits, and that's intensely important to me. So for the long-term and short-term goals, I use my ABLE account both for the short-term goals and then the long-term goals, like more financial independence.
Thank you, Sarah. And Larry, why did you open an ABLE account, and what do you hope to achieve with it for Anthony?
So I opened the ABLE account because our son does receive Social Security SSI, and of course, as has been mentioned, you are restricted from having no more than $2,000 in financial assets in his name, or you risk having your SSI funds cut or stopped. So one of the great benefits of ABLE is that funds deposited in ABLE accounts do not count towards that limit. So ABLE provides a financial account that can grow without fear of impacting that SSI support. And even though our son has a disability, we want him to have as much control over his financial future as he can. I think all parents can understand and probably have had a similar experience where you were instilled early in your life with the value of saving and the ability to put money aside for things that you wanted to acquire or for your future. I myself opened my first passbook savings account when I was 10 years old so that I could have a place that I could put the money I earned with odd jobs and gifts from family members, et cetera, from birthdays and Christmas. So in that vein, I really hope that ABLE will be the vehicle for my son to have a similar experience and to instill that same value system in him in terms of being able to save for his future and, of course, not risking the SSI benefits that he has. Medium term, what I hope we'll be able to do is, as I said earlier, is transfer money that we've built up in his 529 account, his college savings account, into ABLE to give us more flexibility to use those funds for other things, potentially besides a college education. Long term, I think it can act as a vehicle for savings and a source of funds for his entire life for things like housing and transportation, et cetera.
Great. Thank you, Larry. And Edward, can you share with everyone why you opened an ABLE account and what you hope to achieve with it?
Thank you. I opened my ABLE account as a way to save without impacting my waiver. I'm in rural West Tennessee, and I went back to work right after I had my spinal cord injury, so my trial work periods got really confused due to me working a part-time job. So I needed to find a way to be able to save and be able to, pay for nursing care when I'm able to come off my waiver. What I hope to achieve with my ABLE account is putting away money for future vehicle modifications, because being in a wheelchair, having a wheelchair modified vehicle, vocational rehabilitation in our state only pays for one modification, and a $100,000 vehicle isn't easy to come by. So putting away money for that, but also being able to eventually, have my own home, and especially build from the ground up that's totally accessible, that suits my needs, and something that I can grow into and transition from being a young adult to having a family and eventually retiring.
So right along the lines with, the quality of life today, planning for a bright future, back to the slide we had before with opportunity, financial freedom, hope, this is all tying together. Thank you, all three of you, for your answers to these questions. We're going to be diving a little bit more deeply into some of the technical details and how Sara and Larry and Edward made some different choices about their ABLE programs with this next series of questions. So I'm going to just ask each of you to answer, how did you make a choice? There are so many different state ABLE programs. How did you make that choice? And can you tell our audience a little bit about that? So Sara? And actually, I see Sara's on mute, so Maggie, thank you. Sara, go ahead.
Yes. I was born in Michigan and was living in Virginia at the time my account was opened in 2016. My parents still lived in Michigan at the time and decided it would be best to open the account in Michigan, as the state offers tax deductions on ABLE account donations.
That's a pretty compelling reason, and it's a pretty succinct response. Thank you, Sara. Anything else? So that's a good response. Okay. Well, Larry, can you tell us why you chose the program that you chose? And did you look at other programs as well?
Yeah, sure. I kept it simple and chose my home state of Michigan as well. And I did do some research, and just a quick commercial for the tools that are available on the ABLE NRC website. They do give you a great tool to compare other states' programs to each other, so you can make a really informed decision. But in my case, again, I think I wanted to keep it simple and chose the state that I live in.
Thank you, Larry, for sharing that. So, and Edward, can you tell us about your decision-making process with choosing the program that you're with your ABLE account?
Yes. Choosing mine was simple. Tennessee has a very advantageous, 14 different investment options depending on how you want to invest your money, and you're able to change those categories twice a year. And I just felt comfortable with choosing my own home state, but also having those in Tennessee, financial managers, other people that I've come through with my walk of life of going through undergraduate college, getting my master's, being able to rely on them. So choosing something homegrown in Tennessee and asking their opinions on, investment options seemed like the best tool. So Tennessee ABLE was the way to go for me.
You know, and if you look at all three of these advisors did choose their home state. In Sarah's instance, she chose the state that was her home state, although she wasn't living there at the time. You know, other of our ABLE advisors are living in states that don't have ABLE programs, but they've gone with states that are open to account owners from other states that don't have programs up and running yet. And as Larry mentioned, there is the comparison tool, and we're going to be showcasing that later as well. So as much as we have diversity here, there's diversity beyond this. So I just want to reference that as well. But thank you for sharing that. You know, we know folks do oftentimes feel really comfortable when their state opens a program going with the state that they live in. So thank you for sharing your perspective on that. Our next question is, getting into the details even further, how do you make choices between savings and investment options in your ABLE program? You know, it can be a transactional account or a long-term investment account, or both. So can you talk a little bit about that? And Sarah, go ahead and tell us about your decision-making there.
I've called Michigan's ABLE Center for help several times, and all my questions about where to put the money and the investment options and with the debit card, all my questions were just answered quickly and just very clearly. The ABLE National Resource Center is obviously the place to go. It's excellent for any information to do with the ABLE account, and everyone I've ever encountered with the ABLE National Resource Center or Michigan's ABLE Center has been so helpful.
And that's why we shared at the beginning as a disclosure that these three are our ABLE advisors with the center too. But thank you for sharing that, Sarah, and guiding people to those resources at the state level and at the national level. So Larry, can you talk a bit about your savings and investment options and how you make those choices?
Yeah, so for now, you know, we've made the choice to keep these funds invested in cash, so in the savings area in the Michigan ABLE account. So, you know, our goal is really, you know, keep them liquid and available for those, you know, kind of transactional near-term expenses. And we did, of course, as someone talked earlier, get the debit card, which I think is a tremendous addition to these types of accounts to make it easy for parents and individuals to transact through the account. So you know, that said, we did thoroughly research the Michigan program. We liked the fact that MyABLE, which of course is the Michigan program, did offer a pre-screened list of brand name, low-cost investments from companies like Vanguard and other funds. They also have asset allocation models like you do in other, you know, 401k type accounts where you can choose, you know, your age and your level, of course, of investment risk, and have your funds or have your money in various funds accordingly. But again, for now, our goal really at this phase was to keep the money liquid and available for near-term needs for Anthony.
Thank you, Larry. And I think as you articulated, now using it transactionally, but there's opportunities to move towards more of an investment mindset later. And you can also have that be the other way around as well. We have other advisors who are saving for long-term goals and then planning on turning it into more of a transactional account after they've saved up for big-ticket items. So you can see really a wide range of ways and flexibility in using these accounts. So thank you for sharing that. And Edward, can you tell us, you know, you and I have talked a bit about this, how do you make those choices between savings and investment options in your ABLE program? And you mentioned Tennessee has actually the largest number of options out of all the programs.
How I made my choice was, you know, this was new to me, so I approached my cousin. You know, he's a dentist, so he has gotten into investing, but also going back to my schoolwork, I got my MBA, just really sitting down with some of my professors and even going to the bank and, you know, people that were really invested in my future, and they were surprised and amazed and wanted to know if anybody could, you know, join ABLE. And like I had to tell them, no, this is kind of a special account setup, but, you know, I just wanted to hear all of their, you know, hear their knowledge, get their input. Because with me, I'm saving for long term, so I'm looking at this as a nest egg to put away So I have something being deposited. I haven't been as good in the last few months due to different things, but I try to make sure that each job, out of my direct deposit, I have something going in there, but also I do a lot of different research studies. So the little $100 I make here, the $200 I may make off that, different things that I might get cash for, you know, helping the church or church members with computer issues or setting up cameras for elderly individuals. I try to make sure I take that cash so I can put it there. So it's basically out of sight, out of mind, because I know I'm, you know, saving. I'm not trying to do transactions here and there, but I'm looking for the long term of the wheelchair modified vehicle as well as housing. So that's how I made my choice.
Great, thank you, Edward. Thank you, the three of you. You know, there's a variety of transactional, kind of a hybrid, and then long-term investments that we've just heard you share. So thank you for that. The next question we have relates to, do others contribute to your ABLE account? And if so, and you all spoke a little bit about who contributes and how, but who are those people who might also contribute to your ABLE account, or Larry, in your instance, for Anthony's account? And how does that work? What does that look like? What do you do around that? So, Sarah, you're first up.
Besides myself, my parents are the ones contributing to my account. They decided that it would be most beneficial for us to, for them to like contact their financial planner, but I don't think everyone needs to do that. But the financial planner like helps them figure out how much they can take out of their money because they're on Social Security, and what can go in, what can't go in, and then on my end, I do all the managing from the website, the MyAble account website, and I'm able to manage my money for short-term use, like smaller over-the-counter medications, stuff like that, that I can buy and help assist me in my quality of life. So, like, that's basically how it works for my parents.
Great. Thank you, Sarah, for sharing that. So, Larry, can you talk about yourself and Anthony and your family and what the contributions look like and how it works from your end?
Yeah, so while no one has contributed additionally to his accounts, primarily my wife and I so far, in 2019, his grandparents will begin contributing monies that they typically had contributed annually to his 529, and they'll be now contributing those to his ABLE account. So, you know, I encourage families and parents to let everyone know in the family that, you know, this is to explain a little bit about the ABLE account and how they can provide money directly to it for Anthony's future support. So, much in the same way that they you know, are really interested in, they were interested in helping him with his college education in the future. The ABLE account is that and more. So again, it's just really a great way to save, and again, it's a great way to have your family members help support the cause.
Great, thank you, Larry. Yeah, especially as we have family members who are taking into account estate planning. This is a really key thing to think about, incorporating into that and moving forward, as you would with other grandchildren or with those 529 accounts. That's a great example. Thank you, Larry. So, Edward, can you talk about, do others contribute to your ABLE account? I know you do ongoing, but do others?
No, nobody as of yet contributes to my ABLE account, but the portal is set up for, I'm a victim of a hit and run, and sometimes the city of Jackson has something called Edward Mitchell Day, which is every March 29th, and there was a special needs fund set up for me back when I had my accident, and sometimes every now and again you can have somebody that remembers that might contribute to that. But now knowing how easy it is to contribute to ABLE, I could have that link put in for when I do a news interview or do that, something like that, that can be put out there so others can feel if they feel the need to, contribute, they can contribute. but also I look at this as making it so easy to contribute to ABLE for somebody that is younger. So that money that's given for birthdays, Christmases, just because, instead of blowing it frivolously or just putting it in a bank account, I think of considering ABLE out of sight, out of mind, especially when you're younger, because as long as you're putting it over there, you know you can access the funds at any time for those certain categories. And that's the reason why I think, you know, I wish I would have known about it when I was younger, or it would have been established, but anybody that's younger, you know, this can truly help their child and them, you know, for in the future, because it's out of sight, out of mind.
You know, and we do have other of our parent advisors or another one of our much younger working age ABLE account owners who are ABLE advisors who have links and send out, you know, with birthday or graduation announcements, here's the ABLE account if you want to contribute funds there. So thank you for referencing that as well, Edward, and knowing that your strategy is really it's your funds that you're earning from extra different jobs and funds that you can contribute as well. There can be a mixture. You know, you can definitely have family, friends contributing. This could be from your own contributions from work and activities as well. There's a range. So let's talk about our next question. What concerns, if any, did you have about ABLE? Because we know people do have concerns, and it's it is different than what we have heard. Oh, you can now put money into an account with your name on it. Can you tell us about those concerns, and why did you decide to move ahead anyway? So, Sarah, the floor is yours.
It honestly seemed too good to be true, but the more research I did, I quickly realized it was the perfect fit for my life. All the information I accessed showed me it would be a great tool for me to get out of debt. You can put money in at a pace that works for the individual's needs, and you can see that just by looking at how we all use our ABLE accounts, all the advisors. And I decided to move ahead because I was living in Virginia, and I didn't qualify for Medicaid, and my parents wanted to help, and this is the way that they could help, by putting in money but not affecting any of my other benefits.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. So Larry, can you speak from your perspective about concerns you may have had and why you decided to move ahead?
Yeah, so I think, you know, the initial concerns were around the Social Security piece, as I talked about earlier, and, you know, ensuring that the Social Security Administration was aware of all of this, and that, you know, the various branches of government here were communicating with each other, and all their various rules had caught up in terms of, you know, if we made an opening of an ABLE account and added money in there, that it would not be counted towards you know, his asset limit. So I think that was the initial concern, and I think, you know, again, we had our local Social Security office. You know, when we went in for one of his meetings, we asked that questions, and just to ensure that, again, once we set up this account and began depositing money in it, it would not disrupt his Social Security payments. And I think everything fell into place around that, and you know, that was kind of the first area. And I think, you know, the second was this whole ability to transfer 529 funds into it. So initially, when the program was launched, there was some dialogue around that ability to transfer funds from a 529 and roll them over into an ABLE account, but it was not formalized. So it was talked about as potentially being added to the program in the future. I think I have this correct. And eventually, of course, it was, which was great. So, you know, I think to see all of that kind of fall into place, and, you know, now to be able to have it all set up for our son and begin this process of moving 529 funds over, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail in the next question. But, you know, I think, you know, again, just making sure that all those I's are dotted and T's crossed, because, again, you're dealing with a really important, you know, source of funds for our son. So we didn't want to do anything really to jeopardize that, and I think that was a lot of the initial concern that we had.
Right. So really needing to be very educated and savvy and making yourself aware of what the different implications are. You know, one of the things you mentioned, Larry, that has me thinking, because certainly we were working to make sure different agencies and programs that provide benefits that support people with disabilities understand how ABLE interacts and how this does not impact eligibility for those programs. We do have documentation and information on our website that can be used in case you come across any local level staff who is not as familiar with this as they should be, so that we're really providing that information for those who are eligible so that they have that from their end as well. We're trying to cover all the spread, right? But you did need to be savvy about this. That's a great point that you make. I think that's important for our audience to hear. Thank you. So, Edward, can you talk about what concerns, if any, did you have about ABLE? I know you're behind it now, but why did you decide to move ahead? What prompted you to do that early on? If you're thinking about the position that some of the people who are calling in and they're, you know, weighing the pros and cons, should I do this or not, and the kind of concerns they might have that you had as well, and helping them to connect with what you were thinking and what propelled you forward. So, Edward?
All right. Well, the concerns that my mother, my mother and father had, especially my mother, were that, it seemed too good to be true, as I'm echoing what Sarah said before. But with my own disability, why not forge ahead? I deal with it. I'm sure other people experience it, but I've gone through 2 years of no SSI check. And it wasn't about the check, it was about, in Tennessee, getting your SSI check is connected to one of your waiver programs for nursing. So I've gone 2 years without a check. So we approached it, what's the worst that can happen? We file appeals, we're up late writing letters, all the things that you go through with Social Security. They didn't make it easy for me to jump back into work, where it's almost easier to be at home than try to build yourself up while working. So they made it difficult on me to, jump back out into the workforce. And Miranda and the other great people at ABLE helped me navigate the system, because at first I thought I would be able to use ABLE to take a higher paying job, something, making $70,000 or $80,000, and maybe having the business, the company contribute to it or help offset the cost until I could get off a waiver program. But as we experienced, that just wasn't the case. But ABLE is still a great program now that I know how to use it correctly, and it has allowed me to position myself so that I can save and come off the waiver. So we just approached it to, what's the worst that could happen, and hey, ABLE is all good, and it's continuing to blaze trails, and it helps anybody. And I just encourage, people to set it up, because it's not going to penalize you. It's out there for you. Take advantage.
Another piece to the puzzle, an important piece, but certainly there's always additional factors to take into consideration, as all three of our advisors, our account owners, just shared. Thank you. Thank you for that. So we're going to go ahead and ask, we're getting here towards the end of some of our formal questions. The next question we have, if you could go back and tell a slightly younger version of yourselves who was at the beginning of this process, who might be reflective of our audience and where they're at, what advice, tips, or strategies do you wish you could go back and tell yourself as you were getting started with this process that others who are in a similar position can benefit from? Sara, can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely reach out to the National ABLE Resource Center. And I would say to myself, definitely make sure that you are ready for a really good experience. Like I've had something gone wrong in my life with my disability, and especially for people who are eligible with a mental illness disability, this is really a gift. it's a gift to everybody who is eligible because you can access money in a way that doesn't seem scary anymore. Money seems so far like away from me. Like I never had a lot of money in my adult life. I never had the resources to do things that I always wanted to do. And I now, with the ABLE account, taking care of some of the accounts like the finances, like the gas for trips to the doctor or over-the-counter medications has been so helpful.
Great, thank you, Sarah. That's a powerful testimony to that and good advice as well. So Larry, in terms of the advice you would have to give on tips, strategies for others who are in a similar position, I know you've definitely pioneered and learned quite a lot of lessons that are worth sharing with others from your unique perspective there as the parent and with the 529 account you've been talking about. So Larry, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so the first piece of advice I'd have is just do it. So you know, I think there's always that little bit of reticence when you first investigate opening an account like this. Is, you know, what's it going to be like, and what do I need to do? And I think you know, I took the perspective of, hey, I'm just going to take a couple $100 and start simply, and really just to open the account, get it funded, get the ball rolling, and you know, just to see all that happen before I kind of made any more of a significant commitment to the ABLE account. And you know, to my surprise, it went extremely smoothly. It was easy. I got an online account through Michigan ABLE. I could see the funds deposited, and it works much as you know, any account that you might have at a bank or an investment house. It works in a very similar fashion. So once that part was done, you know, I could see how to, you know, easily make deposits and how the account worked, and I could see online, you know, the deposits in the account. Then I began to think more about how we could potentially use this vehicle as a family, and you know, that kind of gets us to the whole dialogue of, you know, transitioning to 529 funds. And I did want to, you know, share a little bit with everyone listening around what my experience was in that and how all of that worked, if it would be of value to anyone, and I'm certainly willing to answer any questions beyond this. But it did take some time to, you know, reach out to our existing 529 provider, which was actually in a different state. So that made it a little bit more complex to make sure that we had the appropriate forms to execute the transaction properly, to be able to move money from the 529 into the ABLE account. And you know, just that's the key part, because at first, you know, many of these organizations didn't really have the right forms developed to be able to execute the transaction, because the forms had to be approved by their compliance departments, and you know, so they could have these available for people who were interested in doing this. So it took some time for, in my case, Fidelity, to have that form available to be able to transfer that money from the 529 into the ABLE account. But once I was able to access the form, a couple of other things for everyone to keep in mind is that you need to make it clear on the form that you are doing a qualified distribution. That'll probably be somewhere on the form, but it's important that you make sure it's a qualified distribution. That's number one. And then secondly, that it's being done as a rollover. So what you don't want to do here is have it come out as a disbursement to you for education expenses. So that, you know, it doesn't just look like it went in for an education. It actually is being rolled over into a different account. So so that would be the second piece of advice. Third is make sure that, you know, you have all the right addresses for where the money is going and where it needs to be deposited to. You got a couple options here. You can take the money, actually accept it yourself, and then turn it over to your ABLE account provider. But I thought it was a lot easier just to have that money go directly from the 529 provider into the ABLE account. And of course, the forms provided give you the ability to do that, but it's important that you make sure you have the address and all the right information to know where that money's going to, so you don't have any hiccups there. And then, I just, like anything like this, make sure you keep copies of all of the forms that you send for your own records, just in case something comes up later. You need to be able to produce copies of the documentation. And the last thing I'd add is remember that you can only deposit up to $15,000 a year into an ABLE account. So, if you're thinking about monies coming potentially from other areas or other people providing money into the account, make sure that, all of that in total adds up to $15,000. So if you decide to move $15,000 from a 529 into an ABLE, you would not be able to add any additional money for that calendar year. So if you think you might be getting money from other sources, just make sure you subtract that and then have the appropriate amount come over from the 529. Sorry, that was a mouthful, but
no, that was very helpful, Larry. And for those who are curious, Larry has broken a lot of this down in his highlight from our September, October newsletter and on his bio on our website under our advisors. So you can see there's a link we're going to show you here in a minute, and if you were to click on Larry's link, you could read more and some more specifics about the guidance he just gave. And of course, the ABLE National Resource Center has information on that as well. The one thing you mentioned, if there's going to be funds put in additional to the $15,000, that's the Able to Work Act, and that's another piece, and we've got lots of materials on that and the ins and outs of that. We've got other advisors who also reflect that story, who are able to put in above that $15,000 with earnings from work, those who are not on benefits, who don't have access to a retirement account from their employer, who are using that in that way. I just wanted to provide a little clarification on that. But Larry, yes, those are some really specific tips and strategies, and you can see as some of the first folks who've had ABLE accounts and who are exploring these issues, they have a lot to share. You all have a lot to share with each other. It's why we want to provide this platform, so you're hearing from one another and your experiences and the kinds of things that are going to be helpful in your success with ABLE accounts and these types of issues. So, Edward, do you have advice, tips, strategies, things you wish you had known in your position when you got started with this, that if you could go back in time, here's some things to do that you could share with those on the call today to help them have a more successful experience with their ABLE account?
Okay. ABLE was really established a little bit later in my late 20s, and I'm just in my early 30s. And I just encourage anybody that has a young child or they may be young themselves listening to this, it's never too late to start saving. Sign up, but the main thing is to know the categories that you can spend these funds on. Nobody wants to have the IRS doing the audit on them and you having to go back and prove what you spent money on and if it was in qualified, categories. So you need to be responsible in knowing the categories that can be spent in. Put away that birthday money, put away that Christmas money, put away any types of money that could possibly come in because it can only aid you in the future. With me, I was a victim of a hit-and-run accident, and actually I also have a special needs trust that was set up through my uninsured motorist, a category, and we've left that alone because it was just so much to mess with. The court set it up so it wasn't a large sum of money. We put it in there and we've just left it alone. And ABLE has allowed me to just really navigate and really do it for myself. So I advise anybody to just, have those different options open, have that ABLE account open. If you already have a special needs trust, try to convert some of that over, but don't lose that. It's just good having multiple things spread around so that it can aid you as you're going on in life. But also those, you got to think, pennies add up to dollars, dollars add up to thousands. Just save because it makes it easier on you later on in life. So I would just encourage anybody to set it up, especially those, even if you're a little bit later, like myself, you're in your 20s, college graduation, if you're going on to get your master's, because, we all have aging, some of us have aging grandparents and others that may leave us a sum of money and don't want to impact their waivers, but having those ABLE accounts set up would allow them to be able to transfer, that limit over to them without impacting your benefits. So set up your ABLE account. It's never too late to start, and just really know those categories, because I encounter people that just want to spend it frivolously and realizing that those, spending it with, outside of those categories can come back to snake bite you in the end.
Well, and one of the things, too, about the ABLE accounts, and you touched on this, Edward, I mean, it does cover basic life expenses. I mean, there's a wide range of things that you can pay for out of your ABLE accounts. We have a lot of webinars that provide guidance on those qualified disability-related expenses and what they are. And, one of the things that gets talked about is that it's almost easier to look at it from what doesn't ABLE cover, what can't you spend it on. And at a recent conference I was at yesterday, one of the things we talked about, you can't spend it on gambling, or you can't take ABLE accounts and give them as, provide them to charity organizations. It has to benefit the account owner and improve their life experience. But yes, I think that is, we don't want to overly concern people about that, but we do want to make sure people are savvy and you have the information you need. And a great place to go to get that information, Edward, might be the ABLE National Resource Center, right?
No, that's over. Sorry, I muted myself.
Okay. All right. Okay, let's go ahead. Thank you for those tips, those strategies. We're going to have an account of this also, a write-up of this for folks who might have been writing down those tips and strategies. We'll be providing that later with the archive, some of the highlights from the things that the advisors have shared. So here's our final answer, our final question for this section. We have one last question at the very end, but before we provide information on the roadmap and get into our Q&A with the audience, the final question we have for our three advisors in this section is, how has ABLE impacted your life so far? So Sara, can you tell us how it's impacted you so far?
ABLE has impacted my life in so many positive ways. I was really concerned about the medical debt I acquired while living in Virginia, and knowing that there was a way for me to save the money to pay off the medical debt has been nothing short of a gift for my mental health. And for the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm able to swim instead of just tread water. Being able to focus on plans for what I want to do with my life, like volunteering in the community, has been amazing for my quality of life and overall happiness.
Well, that's music to my ears. So thank you for sharing that with everyone, Sara. And Larry, how has ABLE impacted your life and Anthony's life and your family's life?
Yeah, I would say, the first words that came to mind for me were stress relief. So just to know the way that we have a way to utilize the funds we had saved for his college expenses in other ways to support his needs has been a huge relief, and I think kind of provides a basis for a financial plan for him going forward, so that we can combine it potentially with other vehicles like a special needs trust, so that he's going to be secure well into his future. And again, that's all about financial well-being and peace of mind for us as parents.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you. So, Edward, how has ABLE impacted your life?
ABLE has impacted my life in giving my parents peace of mind, knowing that if something was to happen today, tomorrow, or when it inevitably will happen, that I have a vehicle such as the ABLE program in order to save and live without impacting my waiver program. Giving peace of mind to your parents or your loved ones is one of the most beneficial gifts that you can give them, because they know that you can be self-sufficient, but also, you can live. You don't have to depend on anybody you know, to manage your funds. You can manage them yourself. So giving them that peace of mind, but also giving my own self that peace of mind to, well, I hit a road bump, you know, Social Security dealt me a raw deal, and now I'm able to, you know, continue to go forward because ABLE was put out there. You know, the senators saw the need to have this set up for individuals with disabilities, and I'm going to work it the best way possible and sing its praises because it allows me to move forward in life as I make those incremental steps in my career, but also eventually to having a family. So that's the impact ABLE has meant on my life, and I'll talk about it at the store, church, in an elevator, in a random parking lot. I'll talk about ABLE any day of the week to anybody, and anytime I encounter someone that could possibly benefit, you know, I always try to make sure I tell them to look into it. Not that it's a sales pitch, but it's a way to help them with their future planning, but also their, you know, their livelihood.
Great, and you can see why you're such a good advisor, all three of you, to the center and an advocate out there in the community sharing your information that from your own stories and lived experience. I think this final impact statement, there's nothing as a facilitator of this discussion that I can add to the powerful words that you shared with our audience. So thank you for that. We have more on our time here today. We have a little more than half an hour left. We can wrap early, but I think we have a lot of questions coming in. So we're going to dive into that in just a moment. Thank you, Sara, Larry, and Edward. We're going to hear again from them at the end. But for now, I want to show everyone on this next slide. You can find on the top, there's Edward, and on the bottom left-hand corner, there's Sara, and on the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see Larry's picture again. And there are the other 5 advisors that we've got. 6, sorry, I can do the math here. Out of our 9 advisors, they cover such a range and diversity of experience. And we have the link here on the PowerPoint that you can access on our website, our ablenationalresource.org website. If you were just to go on the main page, currently it's in the bottom right-hand corner. That's going to be changing here shortly. It's going to be up higher again. But we have their stories and also their bios and their highlights from newsletters we've been sending out, where you can go and learn more about their experience. So we encourage you to check out our other advisors and their stories. And along those lines, before we get into our Q&A, I want to point to 2 other resources that are on our website. One we've had for a year now, our Roadmap to Enrollment. It covers what is ABLE, who is eligible, what can funds be used for? How do you manage your account, and how do you enroll? And that also includes access to our comparison map with the comparison tool for the existing 38 state programs, the difference, you know, the Alliance program, the Stable program, Oregon's Able for All, Virginia's got a new program that's going to be broader, you know, those different opportunities, because you are not limited to the state you live in, whether they have a program or not, and you can go in comparison. You may end up going with the state that you're in, that you live in, just as our advisors have, but there are other options there too. And this is just meant to really help you educate yourself. These are short videos with some resources. They're not lengthy webinars, but go in and check that out if you're considering, if you're, am I eligible? And what would this look like for me? If you've gone through that, or maybe you already have an account, our next roadmap is for you. This is our roadmap to independence. So this is after you've established your ABLE account to help you understand and better set financial goals. How do you build a circle of support that can contribute to your ABLE account and your goals? Help in making smart financial decisions, as well as monitoring your ABLE account, and of course, finally, celebrating your independence, as Sara and Larry and Edward also have talked about here today. So I wanted to share those resources with you too, in case some of the questions that are coming up might be a little more technical in nature. Those are going to be some great resources for any among our audience to get some of those answers. But now let's go ahead and open up for questions and answers from the audience. And I'm going to pull up. I've been getting a series of questions via the Skype. Let's see. So here's a question that's come in. Actually, I'm going to go to the top. Let's see. Oh, here's a question for the advisors. Well, it's actually a question since they've all gone with the state that they're in. You know, that someone asked that they thought that they needed to open an account in the state that they live in, that they were limited to that. But why would someone want to open an account in a state other than where they live? And actually, Sarah, you know, you went with your home state, but you didn't open that account in Michigan. You were living in Virginia. Why did you go with Michigan instead of Virginia? And you were able to do that, right?
Yes, yeah, it wasn't a problem at all. My parents, you know, helped to set up the account in Michigan. I chose mostly to do that because, like I said before, Michigan has does tax deductions on ABLE account contributions in Michigan, and also it made sense. In Virginia, like you said, they're expanding their program, but it wasn't quite what Michigan's was.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's what the comparison tool can help you figure out if one program is going to work for you or not. There are some state programs that are limited to in-state residents. That might be the other part of the questioner understanding that, oh, maybe I'm a resident of this state, and this state only takes residents from this state for their ABLE account. We have heard that. But if you live in, and you might not be able to go into that state if you live outside of that state, but even if you're in that state that's limited to in-state residents, you could choose to go to a program out of state if they are open to non-residents, and many are. Here's another question. And so, hey, Larry, Sarah, Edward, do any of you have multiple ABLE accounts? Can you do that? I'll ask Larry that question.
No, we only have one ABLE account, and as I understand it, you are only able to have one ABLE account open at a time.
That is the correct answer. Thanks for sharing your perspective on that, Larry. And although you can roll it over, I know, Edward, in one of your answers, you'd referred to the fact that you can make changes twice a year to your ABLE account. And one of those changes is you could move it over to a different state ABLE program, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. You know, there are so many great questions that are rolling in here, and some of them are very specific questions that some of our ABLE National Resource Center staff can respond to. We're going to come up with a response to the frequently asked the questions that are coming in here and some of the responses to that, and we'll post that with our archive as well. So come back to the Resource Center and check that out. And even that'll be one consolidated place to find this information, but the answers to many of these questions are available in other webinars, and some of our basics, those roadmaps that I identified as well, will answer a lot of these questions about that are very technical, including information around special needs trusts and such. Here's a question for Edward, and you spoke to this very specifically as well. What do you think about the age limit for 26?
The age limit for 26 is very restrictive, and currently there's legislation going on, and people are, helping motivate change into extending that, because people are getting hurt later on in life, and this can seriously impact somebody. They could be 27, 28, they could be 48, and right now we're working to try to extend that age. Actually, I'll talk a little bit about it later on, but actually I went to the Senate to kind of just help talk about why this age range is so restrictive and people are getting hurt later on in life, and how that can seriously impact and jeopardize their well-being, especially if you would think if it was a father that has a wife and has 2 kids and he was to get injured, just shoveling snow, how much it would deplete their 401k and really impact their quality of life, and why that age range needs to be extended, because it can really help benefit and help other individuals.
I'm wondering if there is one among you that can answer this question. Do you have to report the ABLE account to the Department of Human Services in Michigan when they recertify your disability every 3 years? We could open that up and say in Tennessee too for Edward, and I'm not sure how often you do get recertified. But Sarah, can you speak to that question?
Not really, because I haven't been recertified yet since I've opened the ABLE account. But yeah.
Okay. Well, and maybe
I don't want to
you
give
can
false
speak to that.
information.
Right. Good. Thank you for and especially at the ranges that they are, and you've only had your account open for about 2 years, right? So you haven't experienced that yet.
No.
Okay. And since this is Michigan specific, yeah, Larry, can you touch base on that?
Well, I can add that, you know, the SSA definitely asked when we went in for our last recertification meeting if our son had an ABLE account. They took the account information, and so, you know, there was clearly a process there that they had been instructed to ask. Obviously, everything was all well and good, but, you know, my sense was definitely they wanted to know that he had an ABLE account open.
Okay, great. Thank you, Larry. Here's another question that came in, and okay. we didn't touch on this in the or actually, sorry, Edward, did you want to speak to that too? I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. Actually, I'm actually going through I don't know if you call it recertification, but they are scouring my account SSA. So I've been providing information, and I know in the past it always comes up because also I have a special needs trust, so I'm sure when they see transactions, me shifting money from my account over to ABLE, I'm sure that'll raise questions. But I've laminated and have printed off papers about ABLE, refer to information, email addresses, everything. So once I submit that paperwork to Baltimore, they will know exactly what those transactions are, how it should, you know, it's not counted. And I just like keeping things, you know, on the up and up. You know, even though they're actually not trying to hide anything, the more information that you provide them up front, the less questions you're probably going to get asked later on, or you can say, refer back to last year or the year before last about ABLE, and, you know, let's keep it moving.
You know, and for those discussions, here's a little insider tip. We have an ABLE materials toolkit. If you were to type that into the search on our ablenrc.org website, the ABLE materials toolkit has guidance from the different agencies about how ABLE impacts or does not impact the eligibility for programs. So that's a great site to get that information if you need to help educate someone who, you know, certainly we're working on that from all different angles, but we also want to make sure you have the toolkits in your the tools in your toolkit to be able to address that as well. We've heard that from some of our account owners that's been helpful to them to be able to draw attention to, well, here's what, you know, the federal guidance is on this when you're talking to local level staff. So one of the other questions in terms of a concern is all money in the ABLE account forfeited upon the death of the account holder. I wonder if, Larry, could you touch on that from your perspective and what you've learned?
As I understand it, I believe this does connect to the benefits that were received via SSI. So yes, and I'll look for help from your staff, Miranda. But
yes, no, I'm happy to talk about this too. I know as the three of you were looking into this, and it is something that is a frequent concern of folks. And if you are receiving Medicaid, and there are certain exemptions, but it is something to look into, that there is, once you've opened your ABLE account, the Medicaid services that you've received, you know, at that date and after, they can recoup that out of your ABLE account if you're someone who is receiving those services. So that is something to consider, and we have guidance and information on that on the website as well. But in terms of, I think you all three did know about that piece of it and chose to move forward with your ABLE account anyway, right? I wonder if, Larry, you could maybe speak to that side of it.
Yeah, just to make sure it's clear, they can recoup the money at if you pass away and there's money left in the account, as I understand it. They can't come after the money during the person's lifetime.
Yes, that's true. The other thing is, too, if you think about right now the amount of funds that are in the average account and the fact that ABLE account funds can pay for things, end of life, burial, funeral expenses, which can be quite high, there might not be funds in those ABLE accounts to go after at that point. And different states have clawback. This is something that's being worked on by, you know, at a legislative level and being addressed at the state level. So you'd want to look at your individual state and the decisions they've made around that. This is certainly going to be a topic for future webinars and materials that we'll be sharing, and we do have some of that information on our site also. But these are the kinds of questions that are not, that the ABLE National Resource Center site can certainly serve as a guide to these types of questions. The ABLE advisors themselves, and the questions I'm looking through for Maggie, who's sending me questions, and Marlene, are ones that Sara and Larry and Edward might be able to directly speak to that aren't technical in nature, but in terms of their experience and how they've chosen or used their judgment to use the ABLE account. So do we have some of those kinds of questions coming in? We're getting really great questions coming in, but so many of them are very technical in nature, and we want to make sure we're able to use the expertise of our team. And the advisors are really putting the human face on this, and they've navigated this for themselves. But none of the three of you is a certified benefits advisor, are you? I mean, I know Edward does. He is an independent living specialist with an MBA. Let's see.
No.
Yeah, I'm looking through, and I'll look over here at what Marlene is sending on to me as well. Okay. Oh, okay, here's a question for the three of you. Did any of you review the webinars online at the ABLE National Resource Center or find them helpful? And Edward, do you want to,
yes.
Did you do that?
Yes, I have. And also, with me being an independent living specialist, I go to many different seminars and conferences around the United States. So even before me, you know, stumbling across ABLE, going into such as last year, I was in Spokane, Washington for not nickel, because nickel's in the U.S. Sorry, the name escapes me right now. Rule. I'm so sorry. I've gotten tongue-tied. But at that conference, I actually sat in one of the workshops to kind of learn about ABLE, hear other people's testimonies to ABLE. So going to these workshops, the webinars also helped clear up some confusion for my father, and also gave even my mother, even though she is a heavy reader, that was able to give her, just more insight into what ABLE is and how it could potentially help. And the name of that conference on the West Coast is the April conference, which basically focuses on rural independent living, and these seminars that are given by ABLE account owners, but also the ABLE accounts in those respective states. It's just good hearing that wide array of people that are involved in ABLE and why you should join.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Edward.
Yeah, if I could chime in, Miranda,
yes, go ahead.
I would recommend to everyone. There's one that Chris Rodriguez had done specifically around the topic of ABLE and Medicaid benefits that was answers quite a few of the questions that I've seen, come across here around technical issues about eligibility and benefits and making sure that, everything stays in order there. The specific title of the webinar, perhaps you'll remember it, but it's really well done and very in-depth, and it will answer a lot of these questions.
And Chris was with the ABLE National Resource Center right up until the end of August. He's now executive director over the P&A system in Louisiana. But you'll see Chris and a lot of his materials on the ABLE National Resource Center. We're still working closely with him. He's now living closer to Texas, where his brother TJ, who has an ABLE account, and the rest of his family is. So thank you for highlighting that. I'm wondering if, I want to actually ask, Sarah, I think I'll ask you this question and start with you. One of the questions that came in was, for folks out there who want to enroll in ABLE, do they enroll through the ABLE National Resource Center or through a bank, or how? And hint, hint, it would be okay if you referenced one of those roadmaps, Sarah. But the other part of that question is, when you were enrolling, did you use the comparison tool or find it helpful?
I did not access the comparison tool. I did, the roadmap is obviously the best place to go, because you have absolutely all the information you need and all the links you need right there to click on them, and it'll show you where to go.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And Larry, did you use, so the other thing is, with our advisors who are on, they've been at the forefront and had their accounts open for quite a while, all three of them. But it is an interesting question, and I know that even if when you're making the decision-making process about your program, have you gone back? I know some of our other advisors, Katie, who lives in a state that now has a new program, she started with Ohio, which had the first. Because she got started very early, and she's gone ahead and stayed with that program. But she goes in, and as new states come on board, she checks the comparison tool to see if she might want to switch things over. Larry, Edward, have either of you looked at the comparison tool to think if you might go with a different state, or did you use it in your initial decision-making? And Larry, I'll ask you first.
Yeah, sure. I definitely used it in my initial decision-making. And, I think I guess the advice I would give is these programs do differ by state. They have various investment options and features to the accounts, and those are the types of things. Tax deductibility. I think I heard someone mention earlier. Those are the kinds of things that you want to consider in your decision. And it's much like for those of you who investigated 529 plans. Every state is a little bit different, and their plans are administered by different organizations, and therefore, may have some different features to them. So I think that's why the tool was so beneficial early on, was to help, do those comparisons for me to make my decision. And again, and I think that they're always changing as well. So, they're adding new features. I think ours just released the debit card feature about 3-4 months ago, I believe. So again, they're always changing, which is why I think you want to go back and look at others and see if there's anything better out there for you.
Well, and that's a good point, Larry. I mean, we're actually getting updates from the different states and their programs and making modifications to that tool. We've heard from a handful of states, and others are coming in with, some of them have increased their limits or changed their fees. So we're actively making sure we're updating that information that's on the tool, as well as adding new features to that comparison tool. One other part of that question was, do you enroll through the ABLE National Resource Center? Because I think there's some confusion around that, and I'd just like to take a moment to address that. These roadmaps we have, they give you steps to walk through to help you understand if you're eligible, how do you use this account, and also to decide which program you might want to choose. And then it gives you access to the comparison tool. The comparison tool will then give you links to the different state programs. So once you've said, oh, I like how this one's looking in the comparison, I now have a link to go on that site to get set up with that account. And as part of that, I'd just like to ask, I know in terms of choosing your options, Edward, in terms of actually just signing up for your ABLE account, how long did that take you, and what did that look like?
That really,
hours
when I stumbled across it, no, it was really minutes, maybe 15, 20 minutes max.
Okay, great. And Larry, how long did it take you to register with MyABLE in Michigan?
Yeah, it's a very short process. Really, it's just a matter of completing the forms and mailing in the check.
Okay. And Sara, for you?
Oh, it was so easy. My mom and I did it over the phone with each other on the internet, and it was very quick.
Okay, great. And I know some states do have a requirement, and that'll be in the comparison tool as well, if you do need to come to an office, provide certification information that you qualify. Others, it's what is it like when you're just doing it online, though, when you're not walking into an office and showing documentation of disability? Larry, can you talk about that? What do you do on the website to indicate that you are eligible?
Yeah, I think, if I remember correctly, when you applied, began filling out your information online, you had to basically, check a box that certified the age of onset for the disability. I think that was it. I wasn't asked to provide any more formal documentation other than just to self-certify that he was eligible.
And that's what we understand, too, to be, it's that you're certifying, and if anyone asks you, you need to be able to provide that documentation. But up front, they're going to take your word for that. That's what that situation looks like now for those programs that require that, that you can come in and do that online, which, of course, is also helpful if you're going with a program that is not in the state that you live in, and it would be hard to show up at that local office, wouldn't it? Okay, we've got some really great questions coming in. We've got our team that they're capturing this. We'll be doing some more follow-up, like we said. We wish we could get to all of those questions, but I do want to take a moment to provide an announcement as well. And one of the other things, please do go back, check out the ABLE National Resource Center, check out the success stories, check out those roadmaps. There's a lot of information on our website, but if you're really having a lot of these kinds of technical questions, those two roadmaps are going to be the most effective tool for getting you started, where it doesn't feel like taking a drink of water out of a fire hose. It's very bite-sized pieces, those 5 different steps in the in the roadmap to enrollment, and then the 5 steps in the roadmap to freedom, financial freedom. So that'd be a really good starting place, like Sara mentioned earlier, and it'll get you to those other tools like the comparison map and how to sign up for an individual state program and all of that. But I want to get to our 2019 ABLE Advisor announcement here in our last 7 minutes and tell you a little bit about this. We talked about the role that Larry and Sara and Edward have played with the ABLE National Resource Center, being able to share their stories with others, their experience, their strategies they're using, and put a human face on these ABLE accounts, because that's really what this is all about. We aren't going to lose them and the other 6 advisors. We'll follow them along. They're going to be our advisor alumni, and as they start living into some of those longer-term goals that they've set for themselves, they'll be reporting back to us, and we'll be highlighting those in our Achievable newsletter and on our website moving forward. But we do have upcoming here in October, we're putting out our applications for our 2019 ABLE Advisors. These are going to be 9 more individuals who are parents or family members, or working age individuals themselves who have an ABLE account. And if you were to set one up today, you could put in an application. But these ABLE advisors, they receive a $500 contribution from the ABLE National Resource Center to their ABLE account at the end of the year that they've served, and that's based on full participation of the advisor program. We have a number of meetings, interviews, submission of pictures, their stories, and different activities that they engage in with us. It's very interactive. We've gotten to know each other quite well since the beginning of the year with this group, and that'll happen again with the 2019 advisors. There will even be some overlap where this group will be able to mentor at the beginning of next year our next round of advisors. So we're excited about that. We'll have continuity. But what you do for your ABLE Advisor application, if you're interested in being part of that with us, or you know someone who would, send this on to them if you know someone who would. And a formal announcement will be coming out next week in our newsletter. But what you would do is send us a picture of you, your family, tell us about your circle of support, tell us why you opened an ABLE account and what you hope to accomplish with it, tell us which state ABLE program you signed up for and how long you've been an account owner, and share why you would be an excellent advisor to the ABLE National Resource Center. So we'd want you here to identify your strengths, examples of your current use of the ABLE National Resource Center's website and resources, maybe those roadmaps if you're getting started. And then also, what else should we know about your background and experiences that would support your selection? I have to say, you know, the 9 we have this year, we had a very hard time choosing among our top 30 or 40. We've got such exceptional stories, but you can see from Larry and Sara and Edwards and the others, it's just such a diversity of experiences that we have here. And we want to be able to share those because this is a platform. We want the ABLE National Resource Center to serve as a platform for account owners to be able to speak with each other and share what they're learning, how they're using these to really maximize how far we can go with this and how we can integrate it with other tools we have, because ABLE's not the only game. You know, special needs trusts, these other pieces, how do they intersect and work together effectively? So finalists for our 2019 ABLE advisors will be interviewed by our Resource Center staff, and selections are going to be made by the end of November. And here you can send applications to myself at mkennedy@ablenrc.org. Please put in that subject line, 2019 ABLE Advisor application. Applications are going to be due by close of business October 30th, 2018. And Maggie's going to help me make sure I can make this PowerPoint slide available for download off your desktop at the end of our session here so that you can copy this and have that information in that format as well. So that is very exciting. We're looking to continue to build this out because we do think it's important to be able to hear directly from people who are living, you know, having an ABLE account and how that's impacting their lives. Final question for Sara and Larry and Edward. What has it meant to you to be an ABLE advisor? So Sara, can you tell us?
To me, being an ABLE advisor is really a special thing. It's great to be able to help people in a way that I know I have been helped.
That's powerful. Thank you, Sara, and very succinct. But yes, and Larry, can you tell us what it's meant to you to be an ABLE advisor?
Yeah, for me, it's provided an opportunity to share my family story and to be a resource to the many parents that have reached out to me in this year to learn more about the program. When I first applied to be an advisor, I felt really strongly that ABLE was going to be an important tool for parents, and I wanted to help play a role in promoting the program. I'm not a CPA, I'm not a CFA, I'm just a dad, and you know, I really believe that, you know, this is a really important vehicle for families who have been impacted by a disability, and it's important to try to learn as much as you can, and I think some of that knowledge can come from sharing your story, and that's why I applied to be an advisor, and it's been tremendously fulfilling, and you know, I want to compliment the ABLE NRC staff. They've been wonderful to work with, and it's really been a great collaborating experience, and to learn from my fellow advisors as well, who've been a really great bunch to learn from. So. And I think lastly, it's been really beneficial for me just to help learn more about this whole program And because of the complexities that can sometimes be involved in things like this, it's kind of helped me keep my knowledge level up about ABLE and what it can help with relative to my own personal situation.
Thank you, Larry. Edward, what has it meant to you to be an ABLE advisor?
Being an ABLE advisor has meant the world to me. Having this kind of responsibility, shifted towards me to promote my story, but also to help others. That's why I felt so compelled. Recently, this past July, I was asked to come to Washington, D.C., to the Dirksen building and before the Senate Special Committee on supporting economic stability and self-sufficiency as Americans with disabilities and their families age. And it took part in the Dirksen building. And if anybody has any idea, being in front of a Senate committee hearing, for me, I'm a major movie buff, so my ideas of a Senate committee hearing was watching The Godfather 2, Michael Corleone going before them, or even the famous Senate committee hearing about when the Titanic disaster happened. But being able to get in front of the senators and show why ABLE is important, what modifications need to be made to ABLE, such as extending out the age requirement, also allowing individuals that might be married to set up ABLE accounts, and just the other modifications to make ABLE account work for individuals. I was blessed to be able to go up there and give that written testimony and not feel nervous. Actually, I was speaking my truths and the truths of other individuals with disabilities, because I want to do anything in my power to help us move the cause along, even more and make ABLE even more impactful than it is. So I was blessed to be able to go up there to Washington, D.C., and if it wasn't for Miranda, Chris, and the others of the staff, I couldn't have been able to do that. And just being able to show the senators why I'm here and what's allowing me to go forward in life, and ABLE is a true instrument in helping me go forward in life and continue to be a contributing member of society.
Well, thank you, all three of you, for sharing that. It's been our privilege at the ABLE National Resource Center to have you on as our advisors, to learn from all of you, to listen to your recommendations, and to be able to elevate your voices and your experience for others to hear from and benefit from, to help really address any of the concerns that people might have, and especially around that piece, moving away from the stress that, that lack of financial freedom or financial agency can have for folks, and move into more of a financial freedom and financial well-being and having future plans and even daily quality of life that's benefited by your use of these ABLE accounts. And it will surprise no one that Edward's testimony, the senators, there were an array of experts available, and many of the senators really honed in on asking him questions from his personal lived experience, because that's compelling. Your individual stories, that's what moves this forward. That's what brought this into being. All of the hard work over a decade to bring the ABLE Act into being by so many influential and important disability organizations who took the lead on that. And now we want to make sure that the promise of the ABLE Act is available to others, and if folks have concerns, that they're hearing from others who've gone before them, and you've got the tools, the roadmaps to move forward if this is going to be in your best interest or your family's best interest. So with that, I just thank everyone for joining us here today. We hope this was a helpful experience for all of you. We look forward to seeing you clicking on the ABLE National Resource Center website and sending us your questions at info@ablenrc.org, and applying to be ABLE advisors if that's of interest to you as well. And thank you so much again to our advisors here who joined us today for taking the time to share their experience. We really greatly appreciate it, and wish everyone a really lovely rest of your Thursday. Thank you so much, everyone. And that's a wrap.
Thank you.